Hi everyone. This week we have had an enormous amount of questions about liquid fertilizers, how to use them, when to use them, what to use them on. And so I thought maybe I would kind of demystify some of the things that I personally do in my own garden and the things that I like best for certain vegetables in my methods of using it. And so liquid fertilizers come in different forms. There's synthetic and organic, and of course I'm only going to go for the organic. So that's the only things that we're going to discuss in this. And then once we talk about this a little bit, then we'll go right into the garden and we'll show you how we do some of these methods.
Yes.
Okay, so I have actual liquid fertilizer, and then I also have one that says solution grade, and a lot of times they'll say soluble. And so all that is meaning is it's a dry form that will be mixed with water, and then it's just all it is just a liquid fertilizer. And so they're used the same way. Other than you'll have to make sure that you mix it up really well with the water, because sometimes the dries have a tendency to just kind of float on top if you don't mix it. So a lot of times what I'll do with a dry fertilizer is I'll put it in my water can or my sprayer first, and then I'll spray the water in there, and then that kind of mixes it up on its own. And then if you see any floaties, then you actually have to get in there with, a stick or something to stir it. And so then we have just the liquids, and those are a little bit easier to mix in because they just, mix really easy when you're filling your water can or your sprayer up. And so there's things that I like to use. So I'll use, just a little pump up sprayer. You can use bigger ones, but I actually use this because I might fill this up like 3 times to do my entire garden, and it's a pretty good sized garden, because when I'm doing a foliar feeding, that's when I use this, and I just do a light mist over the plants. But if I'm doing a root drench, then I'll use my old water can here, and then I also go around the base of the plants with that. But if I wanted to do a little bit of foliar feeding, a little bit heavier, I can use the top of the water can. But I usually take this end off to just do a root drench. It's easier to get the water right next to the root area of the plant. Okay, so you have these 3 numbers on it, so it's really just like a dry fertilizer. So you'll have the 3 numbers, your NPK. So you have the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And so a good way to remember this is up, down, all around. So up for when you have a number that is the first number, we call that the up. That means anything that's growing above ground. And then you have the down, and so that is your roots. However, that does include your fruits and flowers. And then you have your all around, your last number, your potassium, also known as potash. And so that is the overall health of your plant. And so as you can see here, this is bone meal. So this is excellent for producing blossoms, and helps with the production of the fruit because of the blossom. And then it also helps with a really healthy root system as well. And so on this fish powder here, it is a 12-1-1. So it has a lot of nitrogen in it, but it has a little bit of potassium, and it also has a little bit of your phosphorus as well. So that one's good for that. And then this liquid bloom is one that I use all summer long. The thing about a liquid fertilizer during the summer, I prefer liquids because it's easier for me to apply it into the plants and the soil, because all I got to do is just do a soil drench or spray it right on the foliage. Because the plants are so big, it's hard to work in fertilizer, and it's better to work the fertilizer in so that the plants can take it in easier when it's in the soil, especially with organics. And so some of my favorites are kelp. So kelp I like to use every other week. So it's more of your all around, it's your potassium in it, but it also has minerals in it and makes things just taste a little bit better. But it's also kelp is a protective layer for plants. So it helps when it's hot, and it helps when it's cool too. So I mean, it just helps with plants with stresses. And then I use a liquid bloom, particularly on my tomatoes. That's one of my most favorite things to do. During the heat here, when it gets 100 and then 110, the blossoms drop, and there's really not a lot that you can do other than that little knuckle there that's on the flower and the stem part of that where the flower develops. it has a tendency to get weak and then they drop. And that just kind of happens when it's hot, but this will help and you'll have more tomatoes when you do this during the summertime. And so fish meal and bone meal, I actually mix these two and feed these to the cucumbers. And so we're gonna do that really quick and then we're gonna jump into the garden and show you exactly how we use it. Okay, so one of the most important things with liquid fertilizers, well, or any fertilizer for that matter, is look at the application rates. And so like this one says 2 to 4 tablespoons per gallon of water, and that gives you some leeway, right? And so I like to err on the lighter side of things. And the reason is I kind of compare the two, plants and humans, kind of being the same way. If we eat our meals throughout the day, we don't get cranky and over hungry. And so the plants are kind of the same way. If they don't get a little bit of food every once in a while, they get cranky, but they show it to us in different ways. And they'll show it through, their leaves turning yellow or other problems. And so I like to feed once a week of the lowest dose on the package instructions. And so where this one says 2 to 4 tablespoons per gallon of water, I will use the 2 tablespoons per gallon of water. And I'll do it just more often rather than try to spread it out longer so they don't get hangry. And so I'm actually going to mix some of these up. If you are doing a foliar feeding, then I always go even a little bit lighter. But if I'm doing a root drench and I'm wanting to feed more, then I'll use the higher amounts of fertilizer. Hopefully that'll make sense. So anyways, we're gonna mix them up and then we're gonna jump right into the garden. So one of my favorites, like I said, is this liquid bloom. And I almost did what I kind of forget to do sometimes. Make sure your lid's on here super tight. Liquid fertilizers have a tendency to settle, so you always want to make sure that you shake them really good before you mix them in there. Okay, so this one is 2 to 4 tablespoons to gallon of water as well, and I'm going to mix this up in my little sprayer. It's on so tight. Okay, and quite honestly, because I do a lot of baking, I don't measure, but measure. All right. Okay, so I'm going to do just 1 tablespoon because this is only a half of a gallon. And like I said, I'm doing the lighter amounts because we're going to do a foliar feeding on this guy. Okay, so that's my liquid bloom. And then I'm going to just put water in this, and I'll do that in a little bit later here. And then on this one, this is my cucumber feeding. This is my most favorite thing for cucumbers. And so I'm going to mix this up in my water can, and I'm going to do a root drench. So I'm actually going to use the full 4 tablespoons because I am doing the root drench. All right. Hope you were counting. I think that was 4. Okay. And then on this one, I actually like to add some bone meal too. So then I get the N and I get the P. So this helps with development. And so when we, oh yeah, I gotta shake it. I had a little help from a friend there. Okay. All right. So this one, we're mixing it with the fish meal. And I'm gonna do 4 tablespoons of this one as well. Not to bore you guys. Whoop. Well, messy is me. Okay, so then I'm just gonna take my water and just spray that right in there so it helps mix it up, and I'll just kind of swirl it around as I do it. Okay, and it looks good and mixed. Clean up my mess a little bit here. Okay, we're gonna go in the garden. Okay, we're over here by the cucumbers and they're starting to bloom. And this is when I like to fertilize with a liquid fertilizer. So when I planted them, I already added some fertilizer in the soil. It was a dry fertilizer, just mixed it with the soil. But now that they're blooming, it's been, well, I've fertilized them a couple of times, but I start fertilizing with a liquid fertilizer about a week after they start blooming. But with cucumbers, I just do a root drench. And this is where I was saying, just take this end off so you can be more direct where you're putting it right in the root zone area, in the soil. And just a quick little water. That's really all it needs. So I'll go around the back side of doing that. And then you can do the same thing if you're growing in felt pots, tomatoes, anything, your flowers. You can just take this and just root drench that soil. I usually in pots water first so that the water doesn't repel off if it's really dry, or the fertilizer doesn't repel off, because if it's dry, it doesn't absorb really well. So water your pots first and then go ahead and do a soil drench with preferably your liquid bloom rather than this mix. But this is one of my favorites for cucumbers. This is the fish powder and the bone meal mix. Okay, well, so we'll move over to the bean plants and show you what we do with the foliar. Okay, I got my diffuser on, and this is one way that you can do a foliar spray as well. It takes a little bit longer, it uses more fertilizer, but it's not all bad because you do get a little benefit from root drench as well. So when you do this though, and anytime you're doing a foliar feeding, there again, follow the instructions and always do it in the evening time as well. It's just better for the plants, and plus it's cooler, it feels better. You're more likely to get out here again when it's hot. You don't usually want to do it anyway, so just sprinkle it right over the top. But as you can see, that this might be kind of a little bit cumbersome if I'm trying to come up really high. It's not hard, but the sprayer works a lot better for that. And I can take one of these sprayers and I can go through the whole garden really quick. One of these will usually do 2 beds that are 25 foot long by 3 foot. So I'll just come through and literally just kind of spray really, really quick. I don't need a super heavy dose, and that's all it is. And so I'm doing this every 7 to 10 days. It's super, super simple to do. It makes the plants absorb these nutrients really quick, and I prefer this during the summertime, and we've had such an enormous amount of success using this. It's wonderful for the tomatoes, it's wonderful for everything. The 2 things that I do like to do root drench would be pepper plants. I don't like to necessarily foliar spray those, and then the cucumbers. But everything else in your garden is really going to benefit from a foliar spraying. So I hope this really helps you guys, and I wish you the best success in your gardens. And until next time, we'll see ya.